Welcome back to Comics Are Dope, the podcast. I'm your host, BJ Kicks, and today I get to present to you a conversation I had with comic book writer Stephanie Williams. Now, interacting with Steph is a lot like meeting up with your favorite cousin at the family reunion, and I think that's the vibe that this conversation has, so I'm excited for you to get to hear it. But Steph wasn't here to promote anything in particular, so I'm going to go ahead and do the promos on the front end. Two projects I want to shout out from Steph. The first just came out on April the 2nd. It is an original Marvel graphic novel published by Scholastic. It is Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur Wreck and Roll. So perfect for the young reader, the preteen in your house. I love YA graphic novels because I've got young kids, and so kids need comics too. I'm always surprised at how few comics are actually made with a young reading audience in mind. So because it's published by Scholastic, your kid might have seen it at the book fair, but again, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, it's only got a $9.99 cover price. Go pick that up. It's absolutely worth it. The art is by Asia Simone, and it is a beautiful and charming book. So check that out. The other project for maybe the more mature reader in your life is a visual encyclopedia. It's called Strange and Unsung All-Stars of the DC Multiverse. It's a visual encyclopedia. It's got a foreword by James Gunn. And basically, this is like a guide to all of those little known characters, the weird characters, the strange characters. So some people that you definitely know, like Peacemaker or King Shark, or even some little known people that are going to make their way into the DCU, like the Creature Commandos. But there's Arms Fall Off Boy. My favorite, which we'll talk about on this interview, is a guy named Muhammad X. There's Maxie Zeus and Velvet Tiger and all sorts of entries from all sorts of people that you forgot existed in the DC universe. And it's written in a style that only Stephanie can accomplish. Like, it's funny. It's a riot. Like, I don't know who can make reading an encyclopedia fun, but that's exactly what this is. So it's out from Running Press right now. You can grab it wherever books are sold. And now that all the promos are done, let's get into this conversation with my friend, Stephanie Williams. All right, guys. Today, we've got a pretty special episode. This one's been like 2 years in the making. I am trying to decide if I'm going to read your bio from your website or if I'm just going to like go off the top. I feel like you're adding credits faster than you can update your bio. So
yeah, so you might be better off just off the top.
So, well, today's guest is a special one. You may know her from her time writing Nubia. You may know her from Den of Geek or all sorts of other places where she's writing, doing all sorts of comic historian things, from her new book, Strange and Unsung Heroes, All-Stars of the DC Universe. I always have to remember the title. But anyway, today we are talking to Mrs. Stephanie Williams. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here as well. Like I said, this has been like 2 years in the making. It's not your fault. It's absolutely mine. So I've met Stephanie Williams 3 times. And so before this interview is over, I will tell you guys about all 3. This will start now, right? So the first time I met Stephanie Williams, this was Heroes Con 2022, which was my first convention and also my first convention as press. And so I go, there's this panel, and I'm kind of salty, right? Because there are 2 panels going on at the same time across the hall from each other. The first one is Louise Simonson and Chris Claremont talking about the X-Men. And it's like, well, who doesn't want to go to that panel?
Yeah.
The second one is Stephanie Williams, Chuck Brown, and Stephanie Phillips just talking about their newest DC comics. And I was like, I got to go to that panel. Like 2/3 of that panel is who I came to see at the con anyway. Why not let that be my first panel? So I go, and I'm one of like a dozen people in the audience because, understandably, Claremont and Simonson are doing a panel together at the same time. So,
Yeah, I
sure.
would have been there.
Right. Right. I did figure, I'm like, well, between like documentaries and interviews, I'm sure I've heard all there is to hear from Claremont and Simonson about the X-Men. But uh, so anyway, I go to this panel, and it's a pretty good panel, right? And then I asked this question, and maybe I'll tell you guys later what the question was. But I asked this question, and Chuck Brown goes, ah, and then answers the question. And so I wanted to start this interview off with, what's the one question you're tired of answering?
Oh, hmm. I am tired of being asked what it is like to be a Black woman in this space because the short answer to that is it fucking sucks. Ooh, don't know if I can curse, but like I'll retake. It really sucks. And it does. Like there are great moments, absolutely, but there are a lot of crappy moments as well. I'm just tired of being asked that because I feel like if you close your eyes and you just imagine, then you might get your answer
Right.
for that because it's only I think like 6% of women who write are writing comics actively. And of that 6%, I can only imagine the amount of Black women. I'm pretty sure it's like below 1%, if that. But that's the one I am a little tired of being asked. Ask me, hey, you know, I don't know, when you write Nubia, like what was some of your inspiration or what things were you trying to challenge with the mascara? Or hey, what is your writing process like?
Mm,
What are some other things that inspire you? Or, what is your favorite type of storytelling?
mm,
What does that look like for you? Just, things about my craft
mm,
because, you know, that I can give you an interesting answer for.
right.
But what it's like to exist in this space, I can't get any more descriptive than it effing sucks sometimes.
Mm,
And that's the truth.
yeah, that's a fair answer. Funny enough, the next question on my list was, what's your approach to comics? That was the next question. I crossed it out.
I so appreciate you for that. And look, let me go back and say, like, no, please don't ever refrain from asking me that because I could feel 50% more or 10% less
Mm.
than what I normally do any day. But no. But what is my I'm sorry, which can you answer the question one more time?
So, what is your approach to storytelling in comics?
So for me, when it comes to storytelling comics, because a lot of the comics that I do are superhero related,
Mm,
for me, it is how can I make the mundane extraordinary?
mm,
And we can easily accomplish that with the superheroes, but also how can I make these superheroes relatable by marrying them to the ordinary. I know for me, a lot of the superhero stories that I really gravitated towards were a lot of the 70s and 80s stuff because you get a lot of those quieter moments
mm,
and you get to see who the hero is when they're not having to punch someone or they're not having to save the world. And I just really appreciate that. It makes those moments where they do have to save the world or they do have to punish that person all the more better because I know who they are as a person and why they're making those choices.
mm,
So that is something that I always ask. And the other thing is, what is it that I wish would have been around when I was younger or even currently now?
mm,
What is it that what story do I want to read that I haven't seen, or what story is it that I want to read that I kind of like the one story, but it was missing Black folks. So
mm,
what does that look like when we're um, you know living on the mascara? What does that look like?
mm,
So for me, it's just trying to if there is a need and is a need that is in alignment with the type of story I would like to tell, then I'm always going to go for that.
right.
I just want to have a
Gotcha.
good time.
I mean,
Even
I
if
think
it's a scary time or a sad time, like I just want to have a good time.
that's a good goal, right?
Yeah.
Especially when your existence effing sucks, right?
Yeah.
So, so your pathway into comic writing, I guess there's not really a set path, But yours seems
do.
like, super unorthodox, right? Like you start out doing web comics, you're doing like pop culture criticism and writing. How or why? What was the determination to say, I'm going to make it in here somehow?
Yeah, coming from another industry that effing sucked to be as a black woman, and that was
Mm,
science, and that is pitfalls too. But I mean, so is life. But I really love science, but writing was something that that was my first love, but that was the first love that I was told wouldn't help me pay the bills. So
mm,
I went the quote unquote safer route, even
mm,
though that's not actually true. Nothing is really safe. But science was not always a guarantee either. Because I thought that I wanted to go on and pursue and like become a medical doctor or get my PhD, MD. I ended up doing none of those things. I applied, it didn't work out, and then I found myself really asking, is this really something that I want to do, or am I just doing it because it feels like the logical next step? And I
mm,
was tired of doing the logical next step. So it wasn't until after I had my son, amazing how children will change your perspective on almost everything,
mm,
that I was asking, like, what am I doing here? Do I want to be doing what I'm doing right now? 20 years from now, 30 years from now, do I want to be 50 years old in this lab doing whatever it is that I'm doing? And the answer was no, not really. So I thought, well, why can't I be fearless and take a chance and just start writing?
mm,
Even if it's just for myself. So I reached out to an author who I adore. So next to comics, romance novels are something that I really adore. Black romance novels to be specific.
mm,
But I reached out to her and just told her how much her writing had inspired me, and I was thinking about starting. So how do I even go about that? She was very encouraging,
mm,
and from there I started blogging. And this is again like kind of telling my stories of parenthood and how I'm like getting through that and what I'm experiencing, and doing that to relate it to characters like Ellen Ripley
mm.
or Sarah Connor, or even Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor, whichever one had
Right.
Nathan. But just fun stuff like getting back to comics, which I again always loved, and just all the other nerdy stuff, and finding my voice and sharing my opinion on those things. And I soon found that when I was on Twitter that people wanted to hear those takes. They
Mm,
wanted to read those things. So went from podcasting to writing for websites like Sci-Fi Wire and Nerdist and whatnot. And then I was doing memes. I always kind of skip that part,
mm,
but I was doing like these X-Men memes where I would just really do a form of storytelling with using the X-Men 92 still shots. And that was kind of how I was kind of playing around with actually writing comics in a way, because, stagnant picture,
mm,
unless you use our words to tell a story with that. But in comics, you actually get to write out the panels. But did that for a while and thought, well, what's stopping me from making comics? I reached out to an artist named Sarah Macklin
mm,
and made Parenthood Activate, and then the next web comic. And the next thing I knew, I was doing Living Heroes
mm,
with O'Neill, and eventually my first official pro thing was Marvel Legacy #1, a
mm.
2-page Monica Rambeau story.
Right.
And then Nubia came after that, and it's just been off to the races since then.
Mm,
But it was scary because I left my
yeah.
9 to 5 to pursue something that was not a sure thing.
Right. And I mean, you mentioned it, right? And maybe it just holds more weight because we're black, right? But
Yeah,
leaving your good job to
yeah,
to write comic books is like
yeah,
it's unheard of. Um,
yeah.
that's crazy. But Parenthood Activate, I went through and I read
Hmm.
it today. Um, and it's funny because it's like, and I guess that's just kind of the nature of webtoons in general. But I love how like it's almost like Rugrats in a way where you kind of like you're in this imaginary world for a second, and then you come to and it's like, oh, it's bath time, or oh, like trying to get the kid to eat, like, or
Yeah,
hid my laundry on the planet Mars, like, and it's just funny because that is so
thank
much
you.
of what dealing with a toddler is like. Um, the first time I read one of your comics, like, and knew I was reading one of your comics was Wakanda #1.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, all right, I'm gonna grab this because Stephanie Williams is writing it, and let's see what this is about. And there's a moment in Wakanda #1 for the audience. Wakanda was an anthology they did during the John Ridley run of Black Panther. T'Challa's exiled from Wakanda. And so they're like, all right, well, while T'Challa's elsewhere, let's just look at all these other people in Wakanda, which was cool because Wakanda Forever was coming out and they were doing the same thing in the movies. Like, there's no T'Challa here.
Yeah.
So issue 1 is focused on Shuri, and she has a run in with Rhino. But before this run in, there's like this moment with her and Queen Ramonda, right? And basically, Shuri's like crushing on this dude Tosin, and her mom calls her out on it, and she's like, "Nah, there's nothing there." And Ramonda goes, "Mm-hmm," right? And I'm like, that is a Black mom, like, and it was I've described this before, right? Like a lot of times when people critique comics, you'll hear like, oh, well, they understood, they got the character really well, right? But there's only a few comics that I can remember reading where I'm like, okay, whoever wrote this like gets me, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
there's that one. There's a lot of like the Milestone, especially like Static and Rocket, where I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
like this is me in a comic book, or like this could be my sister, right? And so when I read that, I was like, all right, this is it. Like, whatever she writes, I'm down for it. Except I
Thank
still
you.
haven't read Nubia.
Oh my God, no. Okay, you gotta, well, no, you don't have to do anything you don't want to, but
Mm,
I would encourage you to read Nubia because it's funny after it's been what, like 2 years almost since I
mm,
wrote the first one. And now the I guess the trickle effect of people finally getting around to reading it. Cause like I get it. Floppies getting them every month is just not the most costly thing ever. I
mm,
even still wait for the trade to come out. And I
mm,
am pushing people to get single issues. I'm like, I don't even do that. But I bring that up because hearing other people talk about what they took from that book and my work, and Beta and I, and just Aletha's art,
mm,
and Mark Morales's inks, it's just made me see it differently. And I didn't
mm,
think that that was necessarily possible as a creator, but it's just really fun having very interesting having people interact with your work and then share their thing. And you go back and you're like, oh, wait, so subconsciously or consciously, I did put this here. And even I see it differently. Now, I look back on that and I'm like, as I am now, there's some things that I would do differently. But, I will give Stephanie of, just starting in her baby comic career, such a huge such a huge mountain to try to scale.
mm.
She did the absolute best that she could at that time. She did a little something. So if you want more of these moments of that's Black as hell,
Right.
it's definitely a Nubia. Even though they're on the mascara, that was something
Mm,
I wanted to have shine through.
mm,
Because two Black women talking to each other, we're always gonna hopefully get those moments.
right. Right. Now I did read. This goes right between your two Nubia series, but this is the Nubia coordination special,
Yes.
right? And there's a moment here. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna spoil this whole plot point, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, that's
this
fine.
comic is however old,
It's very
but
old, so yes.
right. So basically, Nubia's outside walking through an alley, defends this lady from a would-be, let's call him sexual assaulter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go to the precinct. She's taken in there for questioning, and the cop gives his side of the story, which is wildly different from what happened, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
basically, like it's because it's a mom and a daughter
Mm-hmm.
that she's like protecting in this moment. And so the cop is like, oh, well, no, she was like basically trying to proposition me, like she's a prostitute. And then like she beat me up, and Nubia was like, yeah, they just good for their money anyway. Like, it was just wild. And
Yeah.
then but in the real version of events, right, like what stood out to me was Nubia comes in, saves the day, and the daughter is like, Mom. Like there's like this moment where, and they don't say it, it's not like, oh mom, she's brown like me, but you see it like in her eyes. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the expression. it is like another one of those moments. Like, that's dope.
That is that is the GOAT, Mr. Daryl Banks. I've
Mm-hmm.
had the pleasure of meeting him quite a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot just thank him enough for that moment and also the flashback that he drew in Nubia and Amazon's issue 4. But
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that's comics, baby. Like to have the feeling just come off the page that way, to
Mm-hmm.
not even need words, is just the most beautiful thing ever.
Right. And so I was going to save this, but I think this is the perfect time, right? So that question that I asked at the in the con was basically something to the extent of, because again, this is 2022. This is the
Mhm.
first con post pandemic, and there just felt like there was a moment where it was just like, let's get all the black people to do all the things, right? And the question I asked was something to the effect of like, do you feel a responsibility or even an obligation, like while you have this moment, to tell a particular kind of story, right? And your answer, ironically, at the time was no. Like my first obligation is to the character. Like I want to be tell a story that's faithful to whatever the character is. But the example you gave, you said I could be writing like Peter Parker. Like you're gonna know a black woman wrote it because I'm a black woman, right? And so fast forward, here we are 2 years later, and you've got this Spider-Man Infinity comic, or I think it's an Infinity
Yeah,
Comics.
yeah.
It's basically like Marvel's answer to webtoons. And this comic is like Spider-Man is dog sitting and gets into shenanigans because of the dog, right? And there's two moments in this this comic. One you called out on Twitter, right? Uh, Peter is like shopping for I don't know what was it, like a dog
It was like some
manicure or
dog
something.
stuff. Yeah, like
Yeah, like
yeah.
some kind of dog stuff. And he goes $40. And that's like when you're reading it, like either you know or you don't, right?
Hmm.
But it's just like whatever. Like Peter doesn't have any money. That's always been a thing. But like we know it's a baby boy reference. And it's just
Yes,
like,
yes.
as you said, that's black as hell, right? Like there's that. But then in not the last issue, second to the last part,
Hmm.
there's a reference. And I'm gonna ask you, whose side were you on in this Cameron versus JayZ battle?
That is a good question. I wasn't a Dipset girly, but I think at the time I probably did find Joelle Santana cute. Maybe Cameron, but I can assure you it most definitely had nothing to do with lyricism. It was
Mm,
probably because of the pink fur.
mm,
I'm pretty sure. So probably Cameron, and it was more than likely for that reason.
all right. So in that fifth part five, there's a reference to open toe sandals, the chancletas with jeans on. I'm just like, that was a deep cut that I was not expecting to see in a comic book today. But I'm
Yes.
I'm glad that I read it. Like,
I'm glad you did too. I'm glad they let me write it. Because it's funny the way that that comic came about, or like that entire pitch or whatever. It
mm,
was out of the blue. I had spoke to the editor while I was at NYCC, and we were just talking. We were just catching up,
mm,
and and I later when I got home, like a week or two later, I had an idea for like a barbershop type setting, like this hair salon where superheroes would go to, and each issue or each like 6 page 6 panel or 36 panel arc would be like the superhero telling the story of
mm,
like how the hair got messed up or whatever while they're in the chair. And the editor, of course, loved it, but was like, I unfortunately don't have a place for this right now. But
mm,
if you have any Peter Parker stories that you want to tell, can you pitch something? And I was
mm,
like, yes, because I stay ready. So I've been on TikTok when I should be writing. I do it all the time, but I'm always seeing Black women with the most cutest dogs,
mm,
the little labradoodles or whatever, and like they're usually influencers. And I kid you not, I was like, well, I miss shenanigans in comics. So like, what if
mm,
Peter was like dog sitting or whatever? And it was really born out of me seeing Black women on Twitter with these little dogs and Peter
mm,
getting kind of thrown into the mix of this. And as unserious as that sounds, because it's very unserious, at
Mm,
the heart of it, it was just me saying, like, superheroes also need a day off. They need to connect with something that's not going to be so stressful.
right,
Unfortunately, babysitting that dog was still stressful, but hey.
right. No, I love that it starts off like Peter's like, they say like dogs can be calming. Like, all right, I'll do the dog sitting thing, right? And this is like, no,
Yeah,
this is not going
no,
to be a calm experience at all.
no.
Now, the is it the fearsome four or the foursome fear?
Oh, it is the oh my God, what did I name them? It's not the Fearsome Four. It's something else goofy because they're all very unserious
Right,
themselves too.
right,
So you have Dr. Glitch, Haphazard, Madam Two Step, um, which I adored, and then Acidica.
mm,
Because yeah, we need somebody who needs vinegar for whatever reason it is to like use their powers.
right,
And I was very happy I was able to go as goofy as possible for that.
right,
My into comics was like the Saturday morning cartoon.
mm,
So X-Men 92, Spider-Man, and every now and again Iron Man when they had like the reruns on the Fantastic Four. But
mm,
like a lot of those things were not very serious.
right,
So it just felt kind of good to do a thing where these villains were. I mean, I don't know if I would be worried about Dr. Glitch like destroying all of New York City, at
right,
least not on purpose,
right.
but it was fun to just kind of have a thing where, they're bad guys, but they're bad guys that maybe if they do a little community service, they'll get it together.
Mm. Yeah, it's almost like I don't know. I guess the dumb criminal trope is always a thing, right? But it's kind of
Yeah.
like the wet bandits in Home Alone, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like
And
they're
it was Christmas time too when I was writing this. And
mm,
we watched a lot of Home Alone because of my son. So I'm pretty sure that was definitely an influence.
right. Got you, got you. No, I loved it. I loved it. So um all right, so the second time I met Stephanie
Mm-hmm.
Williams, right? This is maybe 20 minutes after that panel. I'm just chilling. I'm at the fourth wall table, and Stephanie's walking by, and my man Danny like stops her. They're having a conversation, and Danny does this a lot. I don't know why he does this, but he will legit like no matter who is nearby, he'd be like, "Oh, you know BJ Kicks, right?" As if like they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to know me. And so he makes the introduction. He's like, "Yeah, he's got a YouTube channel, blah blah blah." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I guess now I have to make the pitch, right? Like, well, hey, I'd love to have you on the show sometime. And that officially made you the first person that I was like, hey, come on the channel. We'll have a
Yeah.
conversation. Right. Now, my bad. It took me 25 episodes to get here. Right. And for me, what it was like it's taken a minute for me to go from seeing myself as comic fan in need of favor
Mm-hmm.
versus someone with a platform or reach or if nothing else like an insightful conversation that can add to something that any
Yes.
professional is doing, right? And I imagine you've had to kind of go through a similar journey yourself. What's the point where you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I deserve to be here, I'm doing what I'm doing?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to I can just see it right now, me saying
Mm,
that it effing sucks on loop on someone else's whatever. But um when I said that is because that's when it dawned on me that this is a job. And I don't mean that isn't this is a job, but it's a job. So any things that so it's not I'm just lucky to be here. Like I'm here to do a job.
mm,
I'm being paid to do this. So yes, I am taking up space and I'm in a space that I deserve to be in, but I'm like, I'm getting paid to do so. So I would like to be treated as a professional.
mm,
And sometimes I get that, sometimes I don't. And that's where the it sucks or it's very frustrating part comes in because now that I fully see myself as I should be here, this is what I'm doing. This is something that I'm at least competent at. Right.
mm, mm,
And now really fully realizing that others don't see me that way, or when they contact me or I'm in conversation with them, I can tell that they don't see me that way. That's where the frustration comes in because
Mm,
I work hard. Um, I mean, tirelessly. I wouldn't be able to put out the amount of work I do if I didn't work this hard.
mm,
So it clicked maybe a year and a half ago.
mm,
It clicked. And that's when I would, get a project, and it wasn't that I wasn't excited about it or anything, but it felt like, yeah, I should hopefully get projects because this is my job and this is what I do. So yes, I this is something that is routine. It is normal. It's not a, oh my God, I can't believe I got this. I'm so happy
mm.
to be here. It's like, no, you clocked in. You're supposed to be in this building.
Right.
So about a year and a half ago, and I think that's when the true frustration started to settle in because those rose-colored glasses were shattered.
Mm,
And I just kind of began to see the industry for what it is,
mm,
what it is not, but also hopefully what it could one day be, which
mm.
is just a better place for everyone. I am so tired of seeing GoFundMe's for older creators that didn't get, there's no health insurance in this.
Right.
Because you said, like, to leave a comfortable 9 to 5 to something like this. Well,
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why I knew that I could leave is because I was able to get health insurance through my husband. If that wasn't the
Mm,
case, then I would have still did it. I
right.
just would have been in marketplace stressed out, but
Mm,
I would have still did it. But it was nice to have that extra cushion so that if I happen to like jump off the cliff and soar and I
mm,
faltered a bit or I even fell flat on my face, it wasn't a smack down on the ground. At least I had a little bit of safety
mm.
there. So, and that's real.
Yeah.
I would be crazy to sit here and tell you that no, no, no. I had $2 in my bank account and I said, you know what I want to do?
Mm.
I want to make history. I want to make comics. That what I mean, and I commend those who do it, but again, that logical part of me just no.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah,
Yeah.
it's funny because I work in health insurance and
Mm-hmm.
I know what I pay and I know what the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace says people should pay. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way. Right. I got a 3 year old.
No.
Like daycare is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine daycare and insurance. Like, we might as
Uh,
well just not have jobs. Like, what am I working for?
yeah. You might as well not have a job. I mean, I had even went for I was lifting for a little
Mm,
bit too, just to the extra funds, to pay for artwork when I was still making comics, myself and paying artists.
mm,
I even did that because I was like, yeah, like it's expensive to
yeah.
be in this. And that's probably another reason why we see a majority of a certain folk in this
Mm,
because they have some of the privilege and whatnot to be in this space. It's hard as a marginalized person breaking in, let alone having a fallback, a cushion, or anything. A lot of
mm.
creators are still working 9 to 5s.
Right.
That's
Right.
yeah. I talk to folks all the time. Like, yeah, like I'm going to this convention, but I have to be at work on Monday.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's real. Um, it's funny because wanted to go back to web comics for
Hmm.
a second, right? So and your kind of path into comics is similar to my path as a fan, right? Like, because you did
Yeah.
a lot of like research, like you're like, well, you were a comic fan, but you're like uniquely overqualified to write comics, right? Like, in my opinion, right? Like most people that write comics they may grow up reading comics, they have their ideas, they have their things that they like, and they might
Yeah.
research something when it's time for a story, right? Like, but you're doing like these encyclopedia entries, right? And then still the accusation is like, oh, these people are just diversity hires. And it's just like the gall. That's crazy.
It's really crazy. It's so crazy, especially too when I've gotten emails before on pieces that I've done for character deep dives,
Hmm.
and as someone, I think it was like Unmay's Love Life, and I left out a character. I left that character out because he was boring. That
Mm,
wasn't worth me writing about. And then he deemed me for that and was like, wait, you're black? I'm like, wait, are you upset that I forgot this character with Unmay, or are you upset that I'm black? Which one is it? And
right.
also, anyway, so yeah, it's weird because I'm like, a lot of times I probably read way more than this person who is challenging me on this one thing. In fact,
Mm,
for the Wakanda #1 that I wrote, I will always look at that as a touch of a mar on it because I completely forgot that Rhino had been to Wakanda before.
mm,
I forgot that he was part of Claw's little whatever, and he kind of like, sprints in. I
mm,
don't think he ever makes it to city center, but he sprints in. And then I kid you not, like when that thing was off, the lettering pass was done. They were like, hey,
mm.
this is off to the printer. I woke up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, just bolted straight up. And I was like, wait, he has been to Wakanda, but you can't. I say that because as much as I know, sometimes it's hard to retain, I mean, not retain, retaining,
Mm,
yes, but like bring all of that knowledge to the forefront all the time.
mm.
Because it's a lot.
Yeah.
Plus, trying to remember whatever I learned in organic chem. Because sometimes I do need,
Listen, more power to you. I went to business school.
right?
Like I kind of learned the same thing I learned in high school and
Yeah.
college. Organic chem was not me. Couldn't do it.
It wasn't me either. I don't even know how I got through it. That or physics.
It's wild. Yeah, nah, you and my sister, black girl magic. I couldn't do it. The highest math I took was business calculus, and I had to drop that
That
and take
sounds
it at
terrible.
community college because my teacher was Russian, and I'm like, okay, you're writing numbers on the board, like that's not
Mm-hmm.
English, and then you're also not speaking English, like I can't do it. Drop this
No,
class.
that was wise.
Yeah, I'm glad I did it because I took it at community college and still only came out with a B, but whatever. I got my degree.
Business calculus is tough. Yes. I listen, that is all that matters at the end of the day. My said degree is in the closet somewhere, still in the UPS box.
Mm, yeah, I never
Yes.
bought a frame for mine. I still got the
I never,
little diploma
yeah.
thing they give you.
Yep.
It's not like it ever got me anything. But anyway, so that time when I met you with Danny, you had your son with you. As a matter of fact, every time I've seen you since, you've had your son with you.
Mm.
And your son is, like you said, instrumental even in you starting to write comics. What does it mean to you to sort of bring him along for this ride and show him this world that you're opening up?
It means everything. Like I couldn't imagine what it would be like to have a parent that was into some of the same stuff that I was. Like my parents are nerds in their own way. Like my dad loves Star Trek and like all kinds of Chevy Chase movies, and my mom loves soap operas, and um funny enough, she also loved Wheel of Time. She'll get into some of the Lord of the Rings stuff. I find her and my grandmother, I find that hilarious. Avatar is their new thing. But no, but like I don't it's he gets to talk to Brian Stelfreeze and ask
Mm-hmm.
him, hey, he's working on a comic right now, and he showed Brian Stelfreeze's art, and Brian Stelfreeze gave him some told him that he loved it, but also gave him some critical tips, which I
Mm-hmm.
appreciated. And my son, of course, was like, I appreciate your thoughts, but I'm still gonna do it this way. He's 8. But he was very respectful about it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait until you are old enough to understand that you just told Brian Stelfreeze, thank you so much, legend, but I'm gonna do it my way for
I'm gonna do
right
my
now,
own thing.
right? Same thing with Sanford Green and being able to expose him to other Black people who are in this space and
Mm-hmm.
show him that, yo, if you want to continue to write comics or do anything creatively, you absolutely can. Because look at
Mm-hmm.
us in this space.
Right.
And I'm hoping that in that when a time comes and he enters his space, it's a little less frustrating. And, he does not have anyone questioning him being there because of some not even us, but because this person is assuming some DEI
Mm-hmm.
initiative, and that's the only reason why you're here, and not because of your actual skill. And you're damn good at what you do.
Right.
But I just think it's the dopest thing. He enjoys going. I know maybe one day that might change. So
Mm,
until then, if he's like, "Mommy, I want to come with you," then I'm like, "Yes, please do," because I know
mm,
one day you're gonna be like, "No, I'm going with my friends," and then that's when y'all will have to come check on me.
mm. Gotcha. So this is just for me, right? I want to know what he spends his print money on, like because Stephanie's son sells his artwork
Oh.
at every convention, right? So I know when the day's over, you pack up the table. There's got to be something. He's like, all right, let's go buy this.
So he is actually good at saving.
Hmm.
He's good at that now. He'll save up for a big thing. So more recently, I think he got himself he's into gaming really seriously and likes to pay like the actual console. So he wanted a
Oh,
Game Boy Color. And I think he took that money and he bought himself a Game Boy Color, which was more money than it should have been. But that's what happens when you gotta get the old stuff that's like no longer being made.
retro gaming. I still have my Game
Mhm.
Boy Color. The sound
Hey,
doesn't work, but it
yeah,
works.
hey, you who needs the sound?
Right. I got mine is it's a Tommy Hilfiger limited edition Game Boy Color. It's yellow with a Tommy logo. And apparently the only reason I got it was because you had to like spend a certain amount at Macy's or Dillard's or something. And so my
Yeah,
mom spent whatever it was on her Christmas stuff and was like, oh, free Game Boy. There's Brandon's gift.
a
I was
woman
like,
after my own heart.
listen, it worked for me. That was a dope Christmas. But anyway, so that's cool. That's dope. I I got into comics because my daughter, who is now 13, which is crazy, but she's just big into art, right? Like sculpting, like whatever. She's just her big thing is art. So found out about this free comic book day thing. The local comic shop was like, all right, we're bringing in artists and sculptors and all these different things. I was like, okay, cool. That'll be a fun thing to go to.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
Star Wars Day. So we made a whole day of it. Go to free comic book day, buy a few dollar bin boxes or books, and she gets to talk to like cosplayers and sketch artists and whatnot. She got a Spider Gwen sketch that day, which apparently is a
Yes.
reoccurring thing for her. And yeah, somehow I left with a pull list, and that is how I got into comics. But it's just my daughter's right all up and through that. It's just crazy.
Oh, I love that. Really makes me happy. I love that.
It was fun. It's fun. It's funny because now she's 13, so like the interests are different. She's still into art,
Hmm.
but we talked, and I was like, "Yo, like, what happened? Like, you don't like comics anymore?" She's like, "I like comics, but I don't like superheroes." And I was like, "Oh,
Fair,
that makes
fair.
sense. That makes
Yeah,
sense."
absolutely. I mean, that kind of happened with me. So superheroes from like 8 to 12, maybe, or 11, and
Mm,
then it was Archie
mm,
on down from I think like 12 to maybe until I graduated high school. I
mm,
don't know, like I just slice of life was my thing. I didn't know at the time, but like
mm.
slice of life was my thing. So no, I get it.
That's
She'll
funny.
find her way back to superheroes, hopefully.
Maybe, and if not,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like
And that's
I
fine too.
I did my job. I think, right?
You did.
And now I have a whole side hustle. So I'm indebted. She's indebted. It's all good.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something in a different interview, and when we talked about it a little bit tonight, right? You slice
Hmm.
of life is your thing, and for whatever reason, like child you recognized that comics can be like soap operas, and I
Yeah.
think that's just a crazy observation for a kid to make, um, because it's absolutely true, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what Claremont's X-Men is, like soap opera, slow beats, a lot of scene changes, a lot of overlapping storylines with a little bit of action in them, right? Like one
Yeah.
day, you're gonna push the pregnant lady down the stairs, or the house is gonna catch on fire, and we'll have to figure out what to do. You'll get shot,
Yeah.
lose all your memories. Like these things will happen. You'll find a way to get over them. And we're either talking about X-Men or General Hospital. I don't know.
I mean, that is a testament of being at your grandmother's house
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And that's how much I was there watching her stories with her
Mm-hmm.
that even at the tender age of like 9, I was like, yeah, she's on my grandma's stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because now my son's 8 and he'll be watching something or reading something, and then he'll like relate it to something else or
Mm,
say, oh, this is just like this thing that I'm like, wait, how do you know that?
mm,
It's just it's really crazy what your children are exposed to, and how they can media literacy, like connecting these things and finding likeness and learning just kind of the rhythm of storytelling and tropes and what to
mm.
expect and all of that. So yeah. Um I actually just got back into watching soap operas. Like
Good.
I mean, I'm not watching them every day, but
Mm,
I was like, hey, let me check this out. And I was like, oh yes, yes, this feels like home.
Nah, see, when I was a kid, we had a babysitter, and she was like this old lady from our church. Like my dad would pick us
Mm-hmm.
up from school on his lunch break and then drop us off at the babysitter's house. And it was like the colored TV was her TV to
Mm-hmm.
watch the stories on. If we wanted to watch something else, we had to like go in her bedroom and like the old like dial
Uh-huh.
TV.
Yeah.
But it was like that TV didn't have all the channels, so it was dumb. So we just kind of sat and watched stories with her. For me, it was One Life to Live. That was the joint. Like
Yeah.
I liked that dude Todd with the scar on his face. I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
but
Because he had a scar.
he had a scar. He had a scar. There was this whole thing because he had like his wife or his ex-wife. He was trying to win her back, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe he did, maybe he didn't. And then they had their daughter. This is so off the rails, but like I don't know, something about that storyline was compelling to me. And then General Hospital, Sonny Corinthos is just that dude. And this was when like it was Sonny and Jason fighting for Carly. Like that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just mind blowing television, especially when you're 8. Like it's amazing.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny, like I still see shades of kind of these soap opera beats in the current cartoons and stuff that my
Mm,
son watches. So I'm thinking like Owl House, Amphibia,
mm,
even every now and again, Craig of the Creek, We
mm.
Baby Bears and whatnot. So like, yeah, like soap operas tried and true.
Nice, nice. So where am I going with this now? So all right. So web comics. I was supposed to
Hmm.
go here earlier. But what if though
Yeah.
is just it's fun. It is great,
Thank you.
right? Like it's if you haven't read it, it is just all sorts of different comic heroes, right? Like this book, Living Heroes came out of it, right? And it's just basically like women of Marvel living single. Is basically what this is, right?
Hmm.
But what if though it's just a bunch of just random scenarios? Like I think the first one is Batman and all his contingency plans for
Hmm.
Vixen. And Flash
Hmm.
is like, do you think like her changing her hairstyles is her powers? And he's like, no. But clearly he does. Right. Like the I think my favorite of them is the this sort of secret origin of the Ninja Turtles.
Yes. So ignorant.
It's
Yes.
it's great. It is great. And it's just, I don't know. I guess like before I read this stuff, and that's where I was getting at before, right? Like I kind of learn, I read or find out about comics, like kind of from the outside in. Like I'll
Hmm.
like, and maybe it's just because I was a music nerd. So it was like behind the music, whatever. Like I'll find interviews and all these other things before I ever get close to reading a comic. Right. So
Yeah.
I think you talked about, but what if though at the panel, and I went home and checked it out and I was like, oh, this is a
Mhm.
riot. Like this is great. But it's like, I didn't know comics could be that. Right. Like, what is it that makes you take that from your head and pay an artist to like make it a real thing?
I'm not, it was the memes.
Mm,
I so because every now and again I would go viral like maybe every 2 to 3 business days from these really silly memes
mm,
that I would put together. And I thought, well, okay, so why don't I just do this in comic form? If it's funny
mm,
this way, then why would it not be funny in that manner? I think the closest thing that I could relate it to was the Sunday Funnies. Like I
mm,
remember like my grandfather was getting the Chicago Tribune or whatever. I would wait until he went through the paper, and then he would
Mm-hmm.
always leave me the Sunday funnies. And
Mm-hmm.
some of those were very, I mean, not as random, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
this is very short stories where we're trying to land a punchline by the last panel. And I think that's also where I was like, well, that exists. So I'll do that, but like my own way. I'll do it. I liked Robot Chicken.
Mm-hmm.
I loved In Living Color.
Mm-hmm.
I just Key and Peele, like Mad TV. I
Mm-hmm.
love sketch shows. So this was kind of my way of doing that a little bit with these characters that were already known because,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty of using either IP or just like characters in general that people are familiar with is that the joke's already baked in. You just gotta
Mm-hmm.
you just gotta pull them out the oven. You just gotta arrange them very beautiful. I mean, arrange them in a way that's appetizing, and people hopefully will get the joke. And if not, then it was never for them.
Right. I think you do also have an advantage, right? Because whatever property you're parodying, it's not like they can acknowledge that the joke is there for the taking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's something that's unique to you or
Mm-hmm.
unique to it can only exist on the internet. Right. Like we're not
Yeah.
gonna get that in a Marvel of Voices necessarily.
No.
Right. Although I guess we do get close with your Marvel Voices story. It's just the Avengers
Yeah.
waiting in line for, for waiting for Monica's mom to come back with the condensed milk for the caramel icing.
I
Right. Like,
mean, they gave me 2 pages, and I freaked out because I was like, okay, 2 pages.
mm,
Okay, what am I gonna do in 2 pages? And then I was like, well, you've been doing these 1 pages, so just turn it into a what if though, but it's official. And I know it was something very silly, but it was around Thanksgiving when I was asked to like invited to pitch this, and I just thinking about, either my mom or my grandmother sending me to the store when I was like a little younger and
mm,
asking for things like Pet's milk and me not knowing exactly where that was
mm,
and kind of panicking and trying to find that, or which still happens to this day, going shopping with my mom and then her walking off to go get something. I'm like, hey girl, we're next in line.
right.
You don't move as fast
Right.
as you used to. So like, will I be paying for this or
Mm,
what is this? So it's the anxiety of will they get back in time?
mm, yeah.
And I felt that I was hoping that would be something that was universal for
Mm,
anybody to feel. So again, that was me kind of making these superheroes, leaning into the ordinary for them to make them relatable.
mm. So speaking of hoping for universal themes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's maybe the most surprising or most charming reaction you've gotten from like a fan from one of your comics?
Oh, I am very happy to say that there have been several. So this is kind of hard for me to pick, and I'm very thankful for that.
Mm,
Um, hmm. I think it was for me, it was one of my very earlier reactions, and it was to Nubia #1. And I was doing my first signing that Heroes Aren't Hard to Find.
mm,
And you know, this person comes in and is like teary-eyed. I'm like, oh my God, like what did I do?
mm,
And they were like, I just want to thank you for introducing Bia
mm,
and just trans women to Themyscira in such a divine way of them being reborn through the well,
mm,
because it just means so much to my sister. And it made her so happy.
mm,
And in turn, it made me very happy. So I just want to say thank you. And that rocked me because I love comics. I know that
mm,
comics are always political. I don't know whether or not.
mm,
But and I know there are stories that have like, really impacted me in the same way as some 500-page novel that I've read.
mm,
But I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is what it feels like to connect with people genuinely over your work and to see like, what it is that you're putting out in the world and how it's impacting people.
mm,
And I strive to hopefully, bring someone joy in some way. Like I said, even if it is a sad story, but or if it's a horror or whatever it is, but to make them feel seen.
mm,
To make them feel heard, again, to bring them joy, to make them feel something. Because
mm,
what is it to be alive? And to experience all the range of emotions.
mm. That's real. It's deep. But no, it's funny because it's like they're I don't know, man. Like I'm a black man, right? I've always been a black man. I guess at a point I was a black boy, right? But I've
Yeah.
always been black and male, and so like there's certain things that resonate with me just on that level, and then there's like the rest of life, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess an interesting relationship like with the word or the term blurred, right? Because
Hmm.
I feel like my blackness shouldn't necessarily define my nerddom, although it
Hmm.
absolutely informs it, right?
Hmm.
So when we come across creators, right, that have a similar background, or you see a character in a situation that's like, oh snap, like they get me, right? It just
Yeah.
it hits you a different way, and you get to have a different interaction with that comic. Like I said, right, like chancletas with jeans on, open toed sandals and jeans. Like it's just, I feel seen and it's amazing. Right. So I appreciate you for it.
Of course. I appreciate you for catching that.
I mean, hey, you threw it out there. I don't, it was so random. I feel so blessed by it. But anyway, um, so the third time, the third time I met Stephanie Williams, this was Heroes Con 2023. And it had been a time trying to find your table. And, you
Oh,
know, no knock to the convention staff. Heroes puts on a great show and I love it. But Stephanie's table got moved like three, four times. So by the time I finally found you, you were like off in a corner and like your whole demeanor was like, I'm done with this expletive. Like that was
it was
you.
a day, and
Mm-hmm.
it at all was not Heroes Con. There was
Right.
no one involved. It was not their fault at all. It was
Mm-hmm.
some other folks that I shall not name.
Mm-hmm.
But it was on them, and you know, Kara and stuff did everything. Kara and stuff, like they did everything that they could to
Mm-hmm.
get me back. But by then, my table had, of course, been taken over because it was a
Mm-hmm.
great space,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to keep me in the same area. So, but yeah, I was in the corner by then, and it wasn't even that I was over it because I was in the corner, because like whatever, I'm like, people will find me, I'm not worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just annoyed by the entire ordeal before then because it was just so unnecessary and didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to happen. And because of what happened, and because it did upset some of the folks that are working the con, that
Mm-hmm.
also made me upset because that's a
Mm-hmm.
big con to put on. They do a lot of like volunteers and everything. So I didn't like them also being inconvenienced. So no, when you by the time you came to my table, I hadn't had a chance yet to reset
Right.
and put on, Stephanie at the convention, business Stephanie, Stephanie that is happy to be here and
Mm-hmm.
talk comics and talk to you about everything. I had not had the chance to pull her up. I was
Right.
still like, yeah,
I'm
it
also
was,
not
yeah.
good at opening lines. I think I walked up to you and said, dang, they got you in the corner, huh?
I
So
was
I'm
like,
sure
yes,
they
they
didn't
do.
know.
No, it did, it wasn't, and it wasn't even a thing of, it was just like, damn, like, nah, I am in the corner. It was like dust bunnies and stuff right there. So, and I think if anything, because, like once the programs are printed, wherever you
Hmm.
are, that's not moved. So
Right.
it was just really crazy. In fact, where they originally had me, the bigger artist
Hmm.
that was there when I announced that I was like going back to be where the people were, they
Hmm.
were like, yeah, I do not blame you. I'm so and so,
Hmm.
and I'm getting ready to go back to my hotel because there's nobody here in where
Hmm.
they were, where we were
Yeah.
situated. So yeah.
It was wild. But I say that to say, I bring that up because you mentioned, right, maybe about a year and a half ago, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I guess like finding your agency, or like
Mm-hmm.
that's such a buzzword, but like really like growing comfortable taking up space, right?
Yeah.
And that moment at that con felt to me very much indicative of that. Like it felt
Yes.
like a catalyst, like a sort of turning point. And when I'm looking at even the work that you're putting out now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it reflects that you're like, nah, I'm doing this, right? Like we've got this book here. We've got Strange and Unsung All Stars of the DC universe, right? How does that
Such
come
a long
about?
name.
That is such a long title.
It had a completely different name before. It was like Heck Yeah, Peacemaker, and like 100 other something something. It was even longer, but
Mm-hmm.
so that came about because another author who I had known for a while, like following them, interacting with their work and everything, had got approached for it and was like, no, this isn't really my bag, but I know someone who will be perfect for this.
Mm-hmm.
And she's done a lot of this character deep dive stuff before. You might have read some of her work.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that the editor was a fan of Nubia and was familiar with my work.
Nice.
We put together a meeting, and he basically told me like what the book was about and like what the writing timeline was, which was absolutely ridiculous. I
Mm-hmm.
only had about 4 months to write that
Mm-hmm.
book, if that. So basically the summer.
Got you.
So yeah, it was like a summer project homework situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked, and I told him that, to me, it makes sense that this encyclopedia feels like one that should have Pacemaker on the front, and there
Mm-hmm.
should be a little bit of humor interjected into that because, you know, these encyclopedias, I love them. I've read them before, but sometimes you just feel very much like a Britannica
Mm-hmm.
situation. And
Yeah.
I didn't want that, but I knew that there's only so many liberties that you can have too, because so many hands are involved in touching this. So WB execs and other editors for the book, the publisher, and so on and so forth. So it was a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
I got a big flash drive that I'll never return. It has every single DC comic or thing in existence from, I don't know, like 1930 something, 1940 something to 2012.
Sheesh.
Everything. Yes. Um, they're never getting that back. I mean, if they didn't get back by now, I hope they've forgotten about it. But like, it was just really cool to have that available to me. Because
Mm-hmm.
as I told the editor, I was like, oh, I can find ways to find some of this stuff. He was like, no, 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 no. I'm sending you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do not break your computer doing that. So it was really fun. And so I had to put together a list, and I think DC accepted maybe 50% of it. And then they had
Mm-hmm.
their own list. I tried to sneak as many or put as many Black folks as I could
Mm-hmm.
on it, and just other, basically as many non-white folks as I could into
Right.
this thing without raising any eyebrows. So I did what I could. But it was fun. It was fun, like reading some of these very weird characters,
Mm-hmm.
which I think gave me some of the license to say, listen, whatever I pitch, it can never be as crazy as Dog Welder. How
Right.
could it?
Right.
Or Dog Welder, this man
Mm.
who's welding dogs onto himself.
Right.
It could never be that wild.
Or listen, man, this arms fall off, boy.
Yes.
Like, and
Who doesn't have a deep history, which I found a little disappointing.
mm,
So I want to write an arm fall off boy miniseries just because he didn't have a whole lot.
there's, I do like, and you mentioned it, right? Like you just sort of injecting humor into the book. First of all, this is a lot of writing, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of words here, but I'm like, that means there's a lot of research that has to go into, and like you had to distill things down to
Oh.
what I'm looking at here, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's pictures. Do you decide what visual references go in here? Like, how does that even work?
So some of them, when there was something that was just like really, I thought would be really cool, I would pull. But no, thankfully there was someone else that was pulling those. But I tried to do my due diligence and hopefully making someone's job a little easier by providing like the page number and panel.
Mm,
I know for one thing, I had to like justify why I had it there because I tried to put so much humor, I mean, inject as much humor as I could in this book. I think it
mm,
was for one of the Scare Tactic members, Screen Queen, I think.
mm,
I hope that's her name. But there was something about her liking Andy Warhol and someone else, and in the comments when I was like going through the manuscript, it was
mm.
like, hey, is this the author's viewpoint, or like is this actually a thing? I'm like, no. It's not my viewpoint. It's actually something that was said in the comic. So I had to go back to that exact comic, get the page. I even gave them the panel. I told them it was the bubble on the right. Like, this is where this is where I got this from. This, I didn't just, pull this from thin air. But BJ, like, I really enjoy that. Like, I have a sickening relationship with like just researching comics. I don't know how to describe it. Like, in the same way, like with science, when I was researching things for like an experiment and see if this work and theorizing and whatnot. Like, I apply that same type of hunger to the way that I read comics. I just find them so fascinating. Because like in like any periodical, like they are truly a snapshot of the times. Even like, you go to the 90s and you can see Reaganomics coming into play and the whole war on drugs. And if there were Black characters around, they're either on a skateboard in the early 90s, like Night Thrasher, or the only time that you do see a hero of color or a Black character definitely is like to fight drugs that have infested their neighborhood. And almost everybody has that storyline. I mean, hell, Punisher turned himself Black to go run around with Luke Cage to fight crack in Chicago, which I found so wild. Right. And Marvel Unlimited early on, I really enjoyed, because if there were like gaps in between, a series or whatever, like it jumped a whole 20 or 10 issues, I was like, I wonder what happened in those issues. Y'all didn't put it on here. And I would go search for them. And it will always be something ridiculous like that.
That's crazy. So speaking of something ridiculous, right? We need the story of Muhammad X.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can give you the same rendition that I told Brian Stelfreeze. So when I was researching the therapist, I am blanking on her name. Oh my God. She's a Black therapist. And I know her name isn't Patricia. I don't know why I want to call her that, but I'm researching her to put in the book because I thought she had some importance. She was the therapist of Superman and also Starfire. And in the Superman stories that she's in, I was reading, Superman comes in because someone told him that he was being biased, that he might be a little bigoted.
Right.
And it really hurt his feelings. So much so that he flew out to see Lois in Paris. They're having like dinner or whatever. And he's like sharing the story with her or whatever. Because what happens is, I guess he's flying and something happens in Harlem and he tries to stop it. And then Muhammad X shows up and is like, hey, I don't know why you here, but I got this. Please leave. And it's like, I would imagine like no one, or if you ask anybody around here, they would say I'm their favorite or whatever. So he goes and he visits Steele's niece, Natasha, and there's some other girl there. I'm blanking on who it is, but he asked them like, who are your favorite superheroes? And then like the white girl, she like all these other white characters, including him. And then Natasha Irons like Muhammad X. And you're like, wait, huh? So he goes and Muhammad X is the one to tell him that, you got some biases that you might be unaware of.
Right.
Like low key calling him, a little racist, just a touch. And he flies to Paris to have this conversation with Lois. Like his feelings are hurt, and Lois is like, "No, like how could anyone say that you're this way? Like you save anybody, Clark. It doesn't matter if they're red, blue, green, or whatever." Now, in the DC universe, that is true. So one could be any of those assortments of colors. But we've heard this conversation before. It's kind of not allowing him to actually see that he might have some bias, and it might not be something that he could possibly correct. Right. So he is talking to the therapist about all of this. And I just found that story fascinating because that is the only time we see Muhammad X.
It's that one issue.
Then it's one issue. And then it ends with Superman running into Muhammad X again. And like basically nothing getting solved. Right. Muhammad X is like, well, no, like you're still a white dude that's not going to come to Harlem like that. And Clark is like, well, I'm a good guy. I'm a good man. I'm like, that's a good man, Savannah. Like, he definitely had that energy.
Yeah.
And he just puts his hands on his hips and he flies off. Nothing gets rectified. No
At all.
biases. Um,
They didn't go on
Nothing.
a diet. Nothing.
No. He flew back
Just
to Paris. And I'm
right.
like, that right there should tell you going from Harlem to Paris in the blink of an eye. Like, what?
No, it's funny. I got that issue in a mystery
Uh-huh.
box. And so that story was funny to me for the same reason, right? Like
Yeah.
and Clark doesn't just go to like the therapy, he goes to like all his friends. And like,
Yes.
and the point is made like, oh, I mean, you're an alien. You can't be racist. Like, you're not even technically white. Like, just it's just wild that why was this the subject of that comic for that month? Right?
You
Like,
know, gotta love the 90s.
right.
We were having a lot of Saturday. The More You Know. This is a very
Hmm.
special episode, and this was Superman's very special episode.
Right. So I wrote a think piece about it and I never published it, but the title
You
was,
got
Does
to.
Superman Care About Black People?
Hmm.
I felt like it was a little too radical for me to be that early in my like YouTube career. But I referenced that book, the other history of the DC universe, the first one with Black
Mm-hmm.
Lightning, and then Superman Red and Blue. Brandon Thomas has a story, and it's like this one black dude that Superman just like keeps saving. Like, I don't know why he's always in these precarious situations, but he just keeps saving this same black dude and remembers his name. And I think that issue or that story ends with the black dude saving Superman somehow,
Hmm.
right? But it's just like an examination, right? Because Black Lightning opens up like just with diatribes against all the heroes, really. But it's just
Hmm.
like nobody's coming to save the hood, basically, right? And we've gotten this a lot in comics, actually, because even like Batman the Hill, right? It's the
Yep.
same accusation. Like, well, why doesn't Batman come and stop crime in the inner city, right? Like in the
Yeah.
projects. Uh, and even then, like, and Bruce is grappling with the same thing. Like, I don't know, Alfred, why? Am I biased? Am I not seeing this correctly? But that was Christopher Priest, so it was great. It was funny. But
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, it just looking at this approach to Superman and black people, three different comics, three completely different viewpoints. And I just thought that was interesting. But it's all sparked by the fact that that issue is like the most random issue of Superman I've ever read.
It's so random. And also kind of chuckle worthy too, because Vixen's first appearance is in a what is action comic and Superman
Mm-hmm.
is there. And she looks very guilty. She looks like she stole this truck full of furs, and Superman, instead of just taking things at face value, gives her
Mm-hmm.
a chance to kind of like, explain. And
Mm-hmm.
then Vixen is able to work out a situation where she gets Clark, the journalist, to investigate this ring of poachers, and they work together. And like that's her first introduction. And then you see that, I don't think that Superman is racist. I think that
Right.
because I think he may have some biases or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and some of them are probably unintentional, but no, I think that Superman would know Muhammad X. Now would Muhammad X join the Justice League?
Not at all.
Absolutely not. No, no. I could not see that. And that's the other thing, like the fact how like when we don't see black characters interact with each other like that
Mm-hmm.
in these team books. And I think Dwayne McDuffie was one of the earlier writers that like I just really fell in love with his writing because we would often see black characters talk to one another. I remember Vixen and the Bronze Tiger and
Mm-hmm.
that whole situation, but
Mm-hmm.
they're both on the same team or whatever, and they're interacting with one another. So I think I try to do that as much
Mm-hmm.
as I can in everything that I write. Because I mean, come on, we on
Right.
a team full of white folks, and it's two of y'all, and y'all not talking. Like I even like I know I was working, especially when I was like working as a researcher and everything.
Mm-hmm.
When I would go to the break room, and there would be another black woman or a black guy, and we realized that it wasn't a thing where we were just visiting or
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh wait, you work here?
Right.
Like, oh, you just down the hall? Okay, so like let's get lunch. It was always that color purple. We're doing the doing the hand. We're doing this
uh,
because of that. But yeah.
Yeah, I love black people. It's just like the the blacks in NASA thing that was on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that
It
was
was just like
amazing. Yeah.
everybody just sharing their headshots. Like, oh snap, y'all work here too? I didn't know. And I
Yeah.
thought it was amazing that so many people didn't know they worked in the same building. But
Man.
that's dope. Like we
Yeah.
here, we have a moment. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't know. Black people have so many inside jokes, right? Like,
Me too.
like we got the black man head nod. We got
Mm-hmm.
we got so many different things. Some I can't really just call out on this show, but because why do I go straight for Boondocks references? But hey,
I mean,
so speaking of black people and inside jokes, it's a terrible transition. But you are a black girl like in STEM, right? Before STEM is like a buzzword, right? Back when
mm-hmm.
STEM was just a major that's gonna get you a good job, right? But now you are writing Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, who Moon Girl is also a black girl who's like all into science. How was that being
Mm-hmm.
able to write a young you, I assume?
It was really fun. I wish that I could say I was vanilla. I was just out here doing goofy stuff outside, like trying to build ramps and like
Mm,
have my brother bicycle and me see if I could jump the ramp, go at full speed. And
uh,
no, I ended up in urgent care. But really fun. Because what a cool character to exist. Like between my son and like his classmates, they all watch Moon Girl.
mm,
And my first time watching the show was when I was working on this book, so it wasn't out yet. And that was something my son and I bonded over was the
mm,
show. He fell in love with it.
mm,
So I was like, yeah, it's this black girl who's just like really smart, but also at the same time still very much a black girl. And I'm
mm,
happy that she's able to be as such
right.
when even when she's not saving the day. So that was a precious moment that honestly like I hold dear to my heart because it was fun. Like I love children's media and it was very exciting to like start getting my feet wet in something that I absolutely would love to do more of. And now I am doing more of in the
Mm,
world of My Little Pony.
mm, nice, nice. I just saw that solicit. IDW has their own catalog now. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just cleaned my office for this video, so I have no idea where
Yeah.
mine is. But I saw your name on it. I was like, oh, that's what's up. How did that come about?
I so I have written two other My Little Pony things like a year apart. And
Mm,
the editor reached out and was like, "Hey, do you have any ideas for like a My Little Pony series?" And I was like, "Well, not at the moment, but I can think of some."
mm,
And I pitched this story with kind of inspired by game night because
mm,
again, taking inspiration from real life. We try to because my son like really loves board
mm,
games.
mm,
Me, him, and my husband like will either maybe one day during the school week or
mm.
definitely Saturday we'll do we'll play a board game. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, so what if found this weird board game? I'm thinking of horror stuff at like
Mm,
a thrift store or whatever. And we play it and then the good old trope of, ooh, we just released the genie or whatever. And like
uh,
mayhem just kind of ensues. So
mm,
it was really fun to put that together. And also the bigger point, I mean, the bigger theme behind the story is for this main character, Misty.
mm,
She is new to Maritime Bay. She's still trying to get used to living there
mm,
and not relying on her friends to show her everything.
mm,
So it's also a story of like, it's okay to try out new stuff and it be a little scary. It's supposed to
mm.
be a little scary a little bit.
Right.
But it's okay. Like you will survive it. So it was those ponies pushed me.
Mm,
Superhero stuff, I can write in my sleep.
mm.
Ponies, mm-mm. I was it brought me to my knees.
I imagine it's hard. My daughter had a bunch of My Little Pony trades, so I have to. She's probably too old for this at
Yeah.
this point, but I'm gonna grab it anyway. I found my catalog. That's what I'm looking at.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I'm
I didn't
excited.
even know it had been announced until because I'm not on Twitter anymore.
Uh,
So a friend had sent me the tweet and I was like, "Did you see this?" I was like, "Girl, you know I didn't see that because I'm not
mm,
on the app."
mm. Why'd you leave?
It was too noisy to
Mm,
be real. it was noisy. And then for me, I didn't know how to be on there anymore. Cause
Mm.
I'm somebody who started off like podcasting, sharing my thoughts on damn near everything, especially comics.
Right, doing all that
Um,
stuff with your friends. I feel you.
yes, all that stuff, memes and just everything. And like transitioning to becoming a creator, like that also made things weird because
Mm.
people are now interacting with you differently.
Yeah.
Um, and I forgot what I tweeted. It was like something just mundane as it could be. I think
Mm.
I don't even remember what it was. And it was kind of similar, not the same, but like very similar energy to that lady who tweeted about enjoying a coffee in the morning with her husband in the garden. And like, you know how that went.
Uh.
So I tweeted nothing similar to that, but like in the vein of just this regular whatever thing.
Mm.
And I got like one too many like bad energy. And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, no, it's time to leave.
Yeah.
I don't have nothing else for this. And then two, like, I don't know, like being a creator and like also being on social media, like is tricky.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll be scrolling, you'll catch a stray, and like, damn, I was just mad at my business. Like, I didn't need to
Mm.
know that.
Right.
Or I don't like I said, it just gets too noisy. And my thoughts are enough. I
Mm.
do not need to hear or read 40,000 others right now when I need
Yeah.
to focus on this one thing. So it was really just a self-preservation and just not knowing what to really do on that app anymore. Because
Mm.
you can't share what you're watching without someone telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't watch it
Yeah. Yeah.
or why you should be watching this other thing. And like, hey, that's fine, but I don't have time to go back and forth about that.
Yeah.
I watched Damsel on
Mm.
Netflix, the Millie Bobby Brown
Uh.
thing, and surprisingly, I liked it.
Mm.
I
Nice.
would never tweet that out, but yes, I liked it.
That's what's up. I've not turned on Netflix in a minute. It's been a minute. I
You're
don't.
not,
You
you
know.
ain't missing nothing.
It's for me. It's comics or scheduling interviews to talk about comics that I forgot to read because I was scheduling interviews to talk about comics. Like
Fair.
that's been my life for the last little bit. But yeah, so you're making a transition right now, right? Or at least you've been telegraphing this transition, right? You've got some creator owned stuff coming.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you can tell us about it as of now?
Black people are it's about black people.
Okay.
Is that is about as much as I can a black family.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about as much as I can share. So for the one is or the two black folks, that's all I can say. And sci-fi.
Mm, okay.
So yes, because again, anyone who's followed me or just heard me talk about like I love just sci-fi horror. So
Mm,
alien stuff, The
yeah.
Thing, Predator, um, Time Cop, all of these like 80s action movies.
Right.
So any way that I was able to finally like really lean into those things that I like really enjoy. So
Mm,
yeah, it'll be black
that's
as hell.
hey, that works for me.
Yeah.
It's funny. That was you walked right into one of my other questions, right? Because you're just a little bit older than me, right? Like you're as old
Uh-huh.
as some of my older cousins. And they caught that 80s sci-fi wave, like RoboCop and
Mm-hmm.
Alien and Predator and all that stuff. And by the time I came along, like I'm born in 91, and it was
Yeah.
just straight up Nickelodeon Cartoon Network. Like that was my life. I
Mm-hmm.
missed this sci-fi wave.
Well, I
What
wasn't supposed to watch it.
oh what was it that captivated you about it?
I think I love creature features.
Mm.
So, from my end was my grandfather loved to frequent this kiosk that was in the middle of the mall, where in another town near us, and they would have these old black and white VHSs.
Mm.
So one of them or two that he got that I would watch all the time was Tarantula,
Mm.
and I think it's called Them, but it's about ants. And I watched, like, I broke that tarantula VHS. Like, I just creature features down.
Mm.
So, when I saw Alien when I wasn't supposed to see it,
Mm.